Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to you. Welcome to the Full 100. Today is Thursday, the 28th of May, and we're edging closer to the weekend, guys. Guys, today's show is about going back to the coronavirus pandemic. I've got quite a few updates for you guys. So, without further ado, let's get to it. Right, guys. Firstly, the breaking news of the day, guys. If you watched my video yesterday, the US was at 99 plus thousand. They were edging for 100,000. I think it was 99,400, something around that region. And I knew they would hit 600 in that one day, as of yesterday. And I've done the video round about 5 o'clock UK time, which in the US would have been about midday. By yesterday, they hit 100,000. Today, they're now pushing for 101,000. There are 100,000 and 800, 700 plus. So another couple of hundred, which will happen by today, they will be at 101,000. Now, you would think that is so scary and concerning that anyone of authority, when that number hit, will double down and say, look, if there's anything I haven't done, if there's anything I've left out, if there's anything I need to make progress on, bring the team together, let's discuss it and get this sorted out. This is way too much. No, that's not what happened in America. In America, Trump has spent his day mocking masks. He spent his day tweeting about Twitter because they called him out on his lies, which, like I said, is 4-5 years too late. They should have called out every single lie, and then he would have stopped. They only called him out finally. Yes, on yesterday was Monday. They called him out finally on Monday, and he took offense to it Tuesday. Said he was going to do something about it, and today apparently signing an executive order. No one knows what's going to be in the executive order yet. No one knows if it's going to have any sort of bite. But that's his baby response to, I'm going to get you back for calling me a liar type of mentality. And people in America have been stupid enough to give this guy the reins of power. And this is what they're getting in return, guys. So while the New York governor, because all of New York is a democratic state. Most of New York has opened, but they've done a similar thing to France, which is isolate where your problem is, open the rest of the city or the rest of the state, and focus on that area, which is what France did. France's main problem was in Paris, so they opened the rest of the country and kept Paris on lockdown. New York kept New York City on lockdown. However, New York State has been opening up. So now he's about to open New York City. Today, he signed an executive order to give store owners the power to refuse anyone entry into their premises that isn't wearing a mask. So if you're a storeholder and you believe in masks and you're not one of these Trump people, then you can stop one of these Trump people who are following his macho lead from coming into your store without masks. So that's what the governor of New York's done with his executive power today. Trump, with his executive power today, is signing an executive order against Twitter for calling him a liar that he is and pointing out the truth about the statement that he made. So that's what he's spending his time doing today. In the meantime, guys, the UK officially is now the most hit country on earth per capita. Yeah. So even though the US is 100 plus thousand now, with their population of 380 million, they're not as bad as the UK with a population of 65 million. And this is based on their official number, which today is 37,500. But you know that's not my number, innit? I've always been putting 50% on that number because I believe the UK has never been honest with the numbers. So my number of UK deaths as of now is 56,250. 56,250. Their official number is 37,500. So I've added 18,750, which is half of that number, on top of that number. And even with their low official number, the UK, as of today, my followers and my viewers, as of today, the UK is worse than the US, is worse than Brazil, is worse than Russia, is worse than anywhere in the world. So if you look at what's happening, the right-wing governments are really breaking ground in this situation. They're setting new targets, they're setting new records, like setting Olympic records. That's what's happening with right-wing governments. Brazil's setting its own record, gone on its own path. Britain set its own record with its right-wing government, gone on its own little Britain path, and now that path has led Britain to be the top country in terms of deaths per capita. The US has set its own record, being the first to hit 100,000 people. What are we seeing, guys? What we're seeing is the result of who you vote during an election. You vote Trump, you get what you're getting right now. You vote Boris, the right-wing guys in this country, you get what you're getting right now. In Brazil, you vote the people like Bolsonaro. I'm going to bring you guys a video today about Bolsonaro, how even the grave diggers are ignoring him now. He's literally, the country's seen that he's a fool. Why that can't be the same in America, I just don't understand. Okay? But at least in Brazil, many people are wising up. So guys, my first video today, guys, is the declaration that the US hit 100,000 victims as of yesterday. Take a look.
100,000 people, each with a family and a unique life story that ended too soon. But that milestone met with no reaction from the President of the United States. CNN's Bryn Gingras is live now in New York with more. Bryn.
Yeah, Alison, as you said, that every death has a name, has a story, has a family. And of course, New York really knows the impact of that larger number. More than 16,000 deaths have occurred in New York City alone. Now, listen, the numbers are going in the right direction now. They are improving. They're continuing to improve. That's not the case all across the country, particularly in the Southeast. This as major entertainment venues are getting ready to also reopen. A heartbreaking milestone in the United States, marking over 100,000 lives reported lost to the coronavirus, according to Johns Hopkins University.
We can never let it become abstract. We have got to remember that these are precious human lives. We've got to remember that they lived, that they had extraordinary lives, that they leave behind family and friends who will never forget the impact that they've had.
President Trump staying silent on the staggering toll. Former Vice President Joe Biden sending a message to people grieving loved ones.
To all of you who are hurting so badly, I'm so sorry for your loss.
It's been over 3 months since the disease began gripping this nursing home in Washington state and overwhelming hospitals in cities across the nation. Now all 50 states are undergoing rollbacks of social distancing restrictions, while 16 of them are still seeing increases in new confirmed cases. And with summer weather bringing more people outside, Dr. Anthony Fauci warning a second wave could happen if people do not change their behavior.
When you have situations in which you see that type of crowding with no masks and people interacting, that's not prudent, and that's inviting a situation that could get out of control.
In California, retail stores are now reopened for in-store shopping. The stay-at-home order in Washington, D.C. will be lifted tomorrow, but the mayor warning,
we can't go crazy. or we know that this virus can get out of hand in our city and in our region, and we could be back to square one.
The Las Vegas Strip will soon welcome back guests, with some MGM resorts and Caesars Entertainment properties set to open June 4th with enhanced safety procedures. In Orlando, SeaWorld announcing its plans to reopen on June 11th, and Walt Disney World proposing to begin a phased reopening of its theme parks July 11th at reduced capacity. But there will be no fireworks, parades, or character greetings for now, and guests will be required to get temperature checks, practice social distancing.
Now, you can see from that video, Trump didn't even care. He's only tweeted today. They hit this yesterday during their daytime, their evening, so early evening, 6, 7 o'clock, they hit that. There was plenty of time in the day for this guy to send a tweet. If you have to be that unempathetic, send a tweet. No, he didn't even do that. He was tweeting about Twitter, tweeting about masks, and all sorts of stuff. His tweet today about Twitter, in the middle of an issue that I'm going to bring to you guys tomorrow, on my video tomorrow. Tomorrow's video is my call to action 5. Those of you who've been watching the news can see that an African-American gentleman in America was murdered on the street by a police officer, blatantly in front of the cameras. But that's tomorrow's topic. But Trump was today, yesterday they didn't tweet nothing about the 100,000. Today, his first tweet today was, finally, today we're going to have some fairness. Guess what fairness he was talking about? You'd think it was the black gentleman who got killed by a police officer. You'd think it was the coronavirus. No. The fairness he tweeted about, got up this morning to tweet about, was about Twitter. That today's finally going to sign an order that makes it fair. It's not fair to call that his lie. You see Biden in the video do what a leader should do. Show empathy, show understanding, show the people that you are carrying their pain with you when you go to your bed as a leader. Trump had no empathy. But that's not surprising, guys. These types of people, Bolsonaro, Boris Johnson, who's here defending Dominic Cummings for breaking the government's own rules. And he will rather keep Dominic Cummings and lose ratings from voters than do the right thing, because that's not his right-wing agenda. Dominic Cummings is his right-wing czar. That's his right-wing czar. So this behavior is not new, my friends. These are the same people that are happy to see an 18-month-old baby wash up on a beach and say, we don't care. You're not coming to our country. These are the same people that lock up babies, separate babies from their parents, toddlers from their parents, and keep cells built for adult criminals and put babies in these cells together, stranger babies that never met each other. So there's no friends in there. These are the same people, folk. These are the same people. They have no empathy. And that's why my channel is going to be here right up until the election. Because really, I'm looking forward to a world where the majority of major countries, other than China and Russia, okay? Majority of top countries have got center-left, empathetic governments in place. All at once. All at once. All women in power all at once. We need that for the world to breathe a little bit, for the infrastructure to change, for the thinking to change, for the policies to change, so that for the next 20 or so years, the common people are benefiting from better policies. My next video, guys, take a look at what this young black journalist, when they put a question to her. The question isn't on there, but the question was, do you remember when Trump went to console those who suffered in a gunshot in the school rampage or some shooting that they had, some mass shooting. Do you remember when the cameras caught a little bit of paper that he had? And on the paper, he wrote, "Say, I hear you." This guy had to write. We make notes. We make notes of the stuff we want to talk about, what videos come after what, so we know what to do. This guy, on the paper, he wrote, "I hear you." He had to be reminded to say, "I hear you." He had to be reminded. He made a note to say, "I hear you," because he wasn't confident that when he listens to these people, he's not sure when to say, "I hear you." He's not sure when to dive in to say, "I hear you." Something that comes naturally. This guy had to write it down. "I hear you." Take a look at what this young lady had to say.
This is not the president's strong suits. I think some of them would argue that in one-on-one settings, he can express this empathy behind the scenes privately. But when it comes to his public demeanor, he has always struggled with this, and particularly with the coronavirus. The president has been obsessed with this idea of credit and blame. Even early in the pandemic, he publicly said that he did not want, for example, to bring some Americans off of cruise ships that had been struck by the coronavirus because he was concerned that it would raise the case numbers in the United States. So when the president thinks about this 100,000 number, he always talks about it and then immediately says, well, it could have been 1 million or it could have been 2 million. Well, for the families of 100,000 people in this country, Americans who've lost someone, every single one of those lives matters, and it doesn't matter whether it could have been 1 or 2.
Welcome back. I mean, those of you who have watched my videos religiously or have watched 1 or 2 will remember that I was probably the first person, the first individual who speaks to the camera, to the people, who called and told you to watch out for left-wing strategy to fighting this virus, and keep an eye on the right-wing strategy to fighting this virus. I called it out before we saw the difference in left and right and the thinking. You've got to be honest. Go back to my 3rd or 4th video in. I called out the right-wing thinking in a time like this and the left-center thinking in a time like this. I separated them for every one of you to see plain as day, and I said, keep an eye on these governments and keep an eye on these. Now, as you can see, 2 months in, I've been proven right because I know exactly what I'm talking about when it comes to empathy. Anything that concerns having sympathy and empathy for the people and doing what's right by the people. If it clashes with their agenda, we're finished. We're finished. There is no turning. Agenda is agenda when it comes to the right-wing people. Guys, let's leave America and the UK. The UK, I know I haven't touched on much because the UK, even though we have that dubious record of being the most affected per capita in the world, it isn't the epicenter anymore. Even the US, you might think, with their 100,000, they're not the epicenter. However, the US right now trying to open up. So before I move away from the US and move on to where the real epicenter is now, I want to show you that with all this madness, they are still, you've got 3 states that's going up by over 50%. You've got 17 states, I believe, are holding steady, or 14 states. 14 states, I think, are holding steady. So they're not going up and they're not going down, but the plateau is still quite high. And then you've got 24 states that are going down slowly. But of those 24, only a few are going down relatively good. The others are going down, but they're still high. So in the middle of all of that chaos, hitting 100,000, there are still this battle between the left and the right. So if you've got a governor who's right wing, the states never shut down. Some of them never did shut down. Some of them opening up while it's still going up. If they got a Democratic mayor under the governor, then that mayor's city is shut down and doing the right thing. But the governor, who's Republican, is not. So they got this mishmash situation in America, but only because of one person, Donald Trump. Okay? So this is what they are doing, opening back up at a time like this. Take a look.
The U.S. is about to reach a painful, grim milestone, 100,000 deaths from coronavirus. But all across the country, states are starting to reopen, some faster, some more deliberately. In 14 states, the number of new cases is growing over last week by 10% or more. 14 states, 17 states are holding steady, and 19 states now have declining numbers. One of 3 states where the caseload growth is above 50% is Arkansas. CNN's Ed Lavandera is there.
Christine and Laura, the state of Arkansas has reported nearly 6,200 cases of coronavirus since this pandemic started. Nearly 1,100 of those cases have been reported in just the last 6 days. And that is why Governor Asa Hutchinson is saying that not only is this a second peak, but it could be the signs of a higher peak that is looming. Standalone bars across the state were allowed to reopen in a limited capacity on Tuesday. And the governor here says that state officials don't want to take a heavy-handed approach in enforcing strict social guidelines and the wearing of masks. They say it is incumbent upon residents across the state to take this threat seriously and to alter their behavior.
Welcome back. So now we're going to go over to Brazil, guys. Brazil, again, guys, you've got to give this platform its dues. I called Brazil when no one saw Brazil coming. I called it for one reason only: the leader's denial. I didn't need nothing else to call it. Didn't need nothing else. I just needed to look at the pattern of this, how it was flowing, know that it's going to get to Brazil and South America after the US. I worked that one out. Once I worked that one out, and they had someone like Trump in Brazil, a Bolsonaro, 2 + 2 can never equals to 3 or 5. It will always equals to 4, guys. Take a look at Brazil.
In Brazil, the coronavirus numbers are continuing to move, but very much in the wrong direction. Monday and Tuesday saw a 2-day spike that surpassed the daily infections in the United States. In Manaus, one of the hardest hit cities in the country, the mayor launched harsh criticism of the Brazilian president, Jair Bolsonaro, blaming him for the spike and calling for his resignation. CNN's Nick Payton-Walsh reports.
This is a landing of last resort, seeking salvation in a coronavirus hotbed. Tiny planes bring the sickest COVID patients from hundreds of miles away, deep in the Amazon, to Manaus, Brazil's worst hit city, and to a hospital bed. A journey most make alone, from which some won't go home. This is what doing well looks like on these flights, moving. The woman on board, struggling, motionless. Once, they had to intubate a patient in midair.
It's very hard. You carry a weight that you don't see. Every time I carry this weight, I feel like I carry this weight.
They arrive in a city mired not only in death, but also fury. Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro has made light of the virus and called the mayor here a piece of excrement for digging these mass graves. They had little choice here when the bodies started piling up. This month, they buried 103 in one day, digging at night. Even in 2 hours, 5 come. One by one, laid in the trench. Many mourners say theirs aren't coronavirus deaths, but it's hard to know here.
The official numbers in Brazil don't tell the whole picture, partly because there isn't enough testing. You can see that here. These are those who've died and have tested positive for coronavirus, but these graves, staggeringly, well, they're the ones that they suspect may have died of the disease.
The mass burial itself distressing.
We are here around 30 minutes waiting for mobiles. I just want
put my mom there and finish this. We don't need this. My family doesn't need this.
We asked the gravediggers who thinks fewer would have died here if the president had kept quiet. No one listens to Bolsonaro, one says. He's not there for the people, adds another. He should have asked us what was going on. But still, the hospitals here receive a daily stream of new patients. These from outlying villages where local tribes live, badly hit too. The ICU, which avoids ventilators where possible using less invasive means, is frenetic. And even the patients have heard what the president said. The mayor is just trying to save lives, says Raimondo, and the president is against that. Inside, a local indigenous leader visits, newly adopting the role from his father, killed by the virus 2 weeks ago. I took my father into hospital, where he was intubated for 5 days, he says. Now we have 300 people with symptoms. Politically, the president forgot us and is killing the indigenous people. Bolsonaro insists he is for economic growth and safety, but the virus is still tearing through the poor here. Their remote way of life was no protection from this modern plague. It just put help further away. Nick Payton-Walsh, CNN, Manaus, Brazil.
Welcome back, guys. So I've got a second video for you guys about Brazil, and you're not going to believe this. I recorded this on Friday, but obviously we had a bank holiday Monday. I had topics lined up for Tuesday, Wednesday. So I've only come back to it today. So this video I'm about to show you is from last week, Friday. Now, the world laughed and thought Donald Trump was loopy when he declared that he was taking hydroxychloroquine, right? At the beginning of last week. And if you watched my video, I made a mockery of the phone call that might have transpired between Trump and Bolsonaro in Brazil. How, yeah, I saw your stunt the other day on TV. You know, I couldn't do it in my country. I was wrong, guys. Because this madman, Bolsonaro, is making people take hydroxychloroquine. His advice is that hydroxychloroquine can be taken even before you've caught the virus, which is exactly what Trump did, right? You see the link? Madmen at play, right? But listen, at least Trump only killed himself or attempted to kill himself. This guy is more dangerous than that. This guy is mandating his people to take hydroxychloroquine, guys. Take a look at this video.
Those aerial shots of graves are just chilling. And, you know, back here in the U.S., there's so much controversy around the use of the drug hydroxychloroquine. It's unproven. President Trump had been using it. I understand that in Brazil, they're suggesting using it.
It's actually plainly advocated in government medical advice. Now, it's been the subject of intense dispute even within the government, contributing to the resignation of one of the health ministers. Quite a lot of cabinet seats changing over the past weeks because you saw there, Jair Bolsonaro, the president's desire to often play down the virus. It's increasingly hard, I think, for him to do that, but focus on the need for the economy to get better. Hydroxychloroquine here is something they advocate you taking if, in fact, you don't even have a severe case of coronavirus, for more moderate or mild cases too. Now, that graveyard that you saw there, we in fact met a woman who was burying her mother and talked about how her mother had in fact taken hydroxychloroquine, and there wasn't a doctor on hand to discuss what had really happened, but certainly the daughter blamed hydroxychloroquine for contributing to her mother's death. Now, I say that's not scientific in itself, but it shows the emotions running high here around that drug. It was given to her on a clinical decision. And, you know, as we know ourselves here, the US FDA have not approved its use for coronavirus. There are some studies suggesting it may even, in fact, be harmful for individuals too. So that is one of the measures being used here by the government. As you see, I'm wearing a mask. That's pretty much universal on the streets here of Sao Paulo.
Welcome back, guys. Right, now, let's remember, I brought to you guys very early on in this when hydroxy was getting trials across the world. Brazil was one of the trial countries trialing hydroxychloroquine. Brazil lost 8 people. They were one of the first to stop trialing hydroxychloroquine. So they stopped it and he started it back up. He is advising. This guy has lost 2 health ministers in a couple of weeks because they totally disagree with him. And yet he's just moving on like a train, not caring about what anyone else says. This is what you get for voting right-wing people with their own agendas into power. We're going to move from Brazil now. South America, I might not have said that yet, but officially, if you remember, there was a time when China was the epicenter in Asia. Then it went to Italy being the epicenter. Then he went to Spain being the epicenter. Then he came to Britain being the epicenter. At the same time, the US became the epicenter. So we had 2 epicenters, okay, world epicenters. Now those epicenters are declining. We now have a new epicenter, which is the whole of South America. So Peru's suffering. Mexico's got it big time. Mexico's got a right-wing government as well. However, he is not as brash. I don't know. I haven't looked into him properly. If I'm going to be honest with you guys, I haven't really looked into him. But because I scanned the news in general, I can fairly say he's right-wing, but he's probably not extreme as these guys. However, his country's suffering. So you got Mexico suffering now. You got Peru is suffering. Colombia's suffering. I brought you guys Guayaquil the other day in Ecuador. Yeah. So literally, we have the only big country in South America that we haven't heard about how they're getting on is Argentina. Take a look at this video, guys.
Rivers is in Mexico City with the latest.
Well, Christina and Laura, we are without question in the worst days of this outbreak here in Mexico, and the new data that's coming from the Mexican government only proves that point. It was Tuesday evening that Mexican health officials announced the largest single-day increases in both newly confirmed cases and newly confirmed deaths. Health officials announcing nearly 3,500 new cases as well as an additional 501 deaths. And to put that into context for you, that means that Mexico has recorded about half of the total deaths that it is attributing to this outbreak in just the last 13 days. Meanwhile, I had a conversation with a World Health Organization official who says that Latin America is swiftly becoming, if it isn't already, the next global epicenter for this outbreak. And given what we have been seeing as of late in Mexico, given what we've been seeing in Peru, given what we've been seeing in Brazil, the worst hit country in Latin America, given all those countries and all those spikes in cases and the spikes in deaths, it's not hard to see exactly what that World Health Organization official was talking about.
Welcome back, guys. Yeah, South America is one to keep your eyes out on from here on in. Brazil right now is already second. So they're second only to America. Now, Brazil's got a population of 210 million. So there's enough bodies in that country to go past where America is now. Only because the leader is still in denial mode. You saw in that clip someone who attributed his parents' death to hydrochloroquine. Now, even though the journalist said they can't prove it, if the person's daughter is saying, this is what we were giving to our mum because of the advice from the government, and shortly after that she died, why should we be surprised that it was hydrochloroquine that killed? It killed 8 people in the trials. No health authority has approved that drug for the treatment of COVID-19. So that's where we're at, guys. The left-wing government's performance as opposed to the right-wing government's performance. And all the right-wing governments, it looks like they're on the same bus. They're all failing woefully. Their citizens are all dying in droves. They are definitely on the same bus, heading and making the right turn. Guys, second to last video now. Just to bring you guys up to date, Africa's not a hotspot as yet, but I believe it will be. I told you guys the other day. However, I also believe that the fact that things got locked down in Europe and Europeans and Africans based in Europe and abroad weren't able to travel home with the virus and infect more people, and this happened a while ago now, back in March, I believe that whole move, that 2-month period where they could have got infected, I believe that saved a lot of lives. So I believe Africa's next, but I don't believe it's going to be a huge blow up as we've seen across the world, because they were behind and they took the action that they should be taking now. They took the action then, before it got anywhere near them. They took the action then. So I believe Africa will be safe. But here's a clip and an update on South Africa, and in with this clip is also an update on what's happening in France. Okay, now in France they've opened back up the schools because they were 2 weeks ahead of us. But they've shut down a school. As soon as it opened, they opened a few weeks ago and they've shut them down. They've shut, I think, 100 schools. Why? Because they found Corona coming back. Now, that's what worries me about the UK and opening up. Because we're not set up to catch a sneaky return of the virus within 2 people having it. We're not set up like that. A school in this video caught 2 people with it, with Corona, and shut down a few schools around. Now, if that were to happen in the UK, my worry is those 2 people who had it would never been caught because our testing isn't that available like that. They haven't prioritized making it available. So you're going to have those 2 people infect loads more in the school. And before we will catch it here in the UK, probably 5, 10, 15,000 people already infected. Okay, so this is my worry for the UK. Now take a look at this second to last video, and I'll see you on the other side.
I'm David McKenzie in South Africa. The World Bank has warned that up to 60 million people across the globe could be pushed into extreme poverty because of COVID-19 and because of the ensuing lockdown of economies. They've provided 100 countries emergency assistance. But there is a worry that progress in alleviating poverty could be now lost. Now, there is some good news. The UN is saying that Africa could be spared the worst of the virus, but there is a fear that livelihoods are now at stake.
I'm Cyril Vanier in Paris. 100 schools in France have now been closed due to coronavirus cases, either in the school itself, students, teachers, staff, or more often than not in the greater community. In one single town southeast of Paris, 25 schools were shut because of 2 cases of COVID-19. The education minister warns there could be more school closures as cases continue to be detected. And the head of the Scientific Council, who advises the government, actually sees a silver lining here. He says the system is working. To put all this in perspective, 100 school closures means that more than 99% of the 40,000 schools that started to reopen across the country remain open.
Guys, as I said, my people, these are the people that made the environment possible to where an 18-month-old baby can wash up on a beach. And my prime minister at the time, David Cameron, not my prime minister, because I didn't vote him, but David Cameron at the time held firm. If that baby had been an American, never mind a Brit, an American blue-eye, blonde-hair baby, I think David Cameron would have done something for that baby. These are the same people, guys, that just show no empathy. Trump today finally put out a tweet, and I'm sure it's because he saw what Biden had done yesterday. Okay, so listen, guys, keep your eyes and your ears open, okay, for right-wing agendas. Always keep your ears and your eyes open and smell right-wing agendas when you see them, okay? And one last piece of advice, don't get caught in their bubble. Guys, here's the last video from Joe Biden being a normal leader that you would expect. Take a quick look.
To all of you who are hurting so badly, I'm so sorry for your loss. I know there's nothing I or anyone else can say or do to dull the sharpness of the pain you feel right now. But I can promise you from experience, the day will come when the memory of your loved one will bring a smile to your lips before it brings a tear to your eyes.
Welcome back, guys. Now it's time for me to close the show for the day. I've got one more show tomorrow, guys. Tomorrow's show is my call to action 5. It's diabolical what we're seeing happen to black folk across the world. So in the meantime, guys, enjoy your Thursday, enjoy the sunshine, and I'll see you guys back here tomorrow.